There are moments in life when you feel as if you are running endlessly, but never arriving anywhere meaningful. You work harder, you plan meticulously, you dream boldly, yet the sense of lack seems to remain like a shadow following your every step. This paradox is not born from the absence of effort, it emerges from the absence of coherence. Desire pulls in one direction, but your emotions and actions often pull in another. The body, so used to surviving under constant doses of fear and worry, begins to confuse scarcity with safety. It holds tightly to what feels familiar, even when that familiarity is a cage. This is why self-sabotage arises almost invisibly. While you affirm abundance with your words, your physiology whispers anxiety through every heartbeat. Your mind may visualize freedom, but your nervous system is tuned to vigilance, to the habit of expecting disappointment before it even arrives. The inner conflict between what you intend and what you embody creates a distance that no amount of sheer willpower can bridge. This distance is not a sign of failure, it is an invitation to realignment. In this guided practice, we will weave together scientific understanding and spiritual insight to recondition the way you experience desire, fear, and possibility. Drawing inspiration from thinkers such as Joe Dispenza, we will explore how emotions of gratitude, trust, and lucid hope can generate new chemical signatures in the body, creating fertile ground for transformation. When intention is felt, not just thought, your entire system begins to rehearse a new identity, one where abundance is not an external event, but an internal state sustained daily. The aim here is not to think positively in the shallow sense. It is to cultivate coherence, a heart steady in trust, a mind clear in vision, and actions small yet consistent. Abundance does not appear instantly like a miracle on command. It matures in the interval between your intention and the evidence of its arrival. Your task is to tolerate that interval without abandoning yourself. In this practice, you will learn how to quiet the noise of fear, refine the clarity of your desires, and embody the state of what you wish to manifest, even before it shows up. By the end, you will carry with you a daily roadmap, both intimate and practical, that will allow you to measure your growth not by fantasies, but by real grounded evidence of transformation. Scarcity is rarely about the absence of resources. More often, it is a learned state, an emotional posture that shapes how the nervous system responds to life itself. Imagine a person who has lived for years under the constant pressure of needing to anticipate what could go wrong. Even when circumstances begin to improve, the body resists relaxation. The familiar sensation of worry has become a signal of safety, while peace feels alien, almost threatening. In this paradox, opportunities arrive yet are unconsciously resisted, for the system believes survival depends on vigilance. The desire for abundance, therefore, is not only about acquiring more, it is also a longing for internal rest, for the relief of existing without guilt or hyper-alertness. When scarcity sets its roots, three primary dynamics often emerge. The first is the dissonance between desire and vibration. A person may imagine a future of freedom, but the emotional soundtrack beneath those images is often anxiety, doubt, or frustration. The brain does not learn from occasional thoughts, but from repeated feelings, and if those feelings are misaligned, the desired vision fails to anchor. The second dynamic is the compulsion for control. To mask the discomfort of uncertainty, one tries to manage time, people, or outcomes, tightening the grip until fear of losing control becomes stronger than the hope of growth. The third dynamic is a form of spiritual performance. Practices that should nurture presence are turned into techniques to suppress discomfort. Instead of transforming the inner state, they deepen the guilt of not doing it right, reinforcing the very cycle they intended to break. A misunderstood aspect of self-sabotage is that it is not simply laziness or resistance. It is often a form of self-protection. The body recognizes change as a threat to its familiar identity. Starting a new project, making an unfamiliar choice, or stepping toward visibility creates a gap between who I have been and who I want to become. The nervous system interprets this gap as danger, triggering hesitation, procrastination, or distraction. What appears as weakness is actually the body's attempt to preserve continuity. Healing, therefore, is not about forcing relentless action, but about teaching the body to feel safe while moving without guarantees. Practices such as conscious breathing, silence, and small exposures to discomfort gently train this tolerance for the interval. Scarcity also thrives on the pursuit of fleeting rewards. In the age of constant stimulation, dopamine-driven cycles make it easy to confuse excitement with fulfillment. A quick purchase, a motivational clip, or a promise of overnight success provides a temporary rush, but at the cost of long-term stability. Each spike reduces sensitivity to simple joy, deepening emptiness and fueling compulsive searching for the next fix. Over time, this erratic rhythm fractures intention and leaves the person scattered, unable to sustain focus on what truly matters. The antidote lies not in rejecting pleasure, but in rediscovering slower, steadier forms of satisfaction that can anchor the nervous system. A central misunderstanding in the journey out of scarcity is the confusion between clarity and certainty. Clarity is the ability to perceive the next coherent step with presence. Certainty is the demand for a guaranteed outcome before taking action. The first allows movement even in uncertainty. The second paralyzes. When someone insists on absolute guarantees, they delay indefinitely, for life never provides such contracts. By cultivating clarity, small steps consistently chosen with presence, the brain learns trust through lived evidence. Tiny successes, repeated with patience, build a deeper foundation than grand promises that remain untested. To bring this diagnosis into daily life, one must learn to observe without judgment. Noticing irritability after consuming positive content, chronic restlessness, or the habit of promising much while executing little are not failures. They are signals that the body is still tuned to scarcity. These subtle cues invite regulation before strategy. It is useless to design ambitious plans if the inner strings remain untuned. The metaphor of a musical instrument helps here. A violin may hold the most beautiful score, but if its strings are tense and unaligned, the music will never resonate. The adjustment must come before the performance. Scarcity also reveals itself in the inability to celebrate progress. For many, accomplishments are immediately overshadowed by comparison or by the next demand. This constant deferral of satisfaction keeps the nervous system locked in pursuit, never in arrival. True transformation occurs when the individual learns to pause and allow small victories to register. It is not indulgence, it is rewiring. Each acknowledgement of progress teaches the body that safety can coexist with movement, that joy is not only at the finish line, but also along the path. Practical exploration of these dynamics begins with a simple yet profound exercise. Divide a page into 3 columns. In the first, write down a desire, something tangible or intangible that carries meaning. In the second, name the dominant emotion that arises when you contemplate this desire. In the third, identify the smallest action you can take today that validates this desire in the present moment. This exercise unmasks the dissonance between vision and state, offering a direct opportunity to bridge them. The act is not symbolic, it is neurophysiological. Each alignment between thought, feeling, and action reshapes the body's memory of what is normal. The journey of diagnosing scarcity requires humility. It is not about labeling yourself as broken or flawed, but about recognizing how the nervous system has been conditioned to seek safety in vigilance rather than in expansion. By understanding the subtle ways scarcity disguises itself as control, as performance, as procrastination, you begin to separate your identity from the pattern. You are not scarcity itself. You are the one capable of observing and retraining its signals. This perspective opens the path not through brute force, but through coherence. By calming the body, refining the mind, and aligning action with presence. When this diagnosis is clear, the fog of confusion begins to lift. What once appeared as personal weakness is reframed as a learned adaptation, one that can be unlearned with patience and method. From this clarity, the journey forward becomes not a desperate attempt to escape lack, but a steady practice of inhabiting abundance one aligned step at a time. Reconditioning begins with the recognition that emotions are not random visitors, but structured programs that imprint themselves on the body and the mind. Each repeated emotion sculpts neural pathways, reinforces memories, and creates predispositions for action. Scarcity is not simply a mindset. It is a biochemical rhythm rehearsed so often that it becomes the default. To shift it, one must orchestrate new rhythms through breath, attention, and imagery. that teach the body to anticipate a different future. This is not about forcing yourself into optimism. It is about cultivating the physiological state in which abundance becomes believable. Silence plays a role more profound than mere absence of words. It is not the void, but the soil in which intention takes root. In the rush of daily noise, the mind becomes scattered, jumping between tasks and expectations, unable to hear its own clarity. When silence is practiced with discipline, the nervous system recalibrates. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for choice and direction, regains its capacity to edit thoughts rather than drown in them. Words of intention spoken before silence carry little weight, but words of intention spoken after silence emerge with resonance, as if the body itself consents to their truth. Breath is the most accessible entry point to this reconditioning. A steady rhythm, such as inhaling for 5 counts and exhaling for 5, creates coherence between the heart and the brain. As heart rate variability increases, emotional reactivity decreases. This state does not eliminate challenge, but it anchors presence in the midst of it. With breath as anchor, one learns that abundance is not an external event waiting to arrive, but an inner harmony cultivated daily. Each cycle of inhalation and exhalation becomes a rehearsal of trust. Trust that life continues, trust that energy flows, trust that presence is enough. Attention, often underestimated, is the editor of destiny. Where it lingers, energy flows. Where it scatters, vitality drains. In scarcity, attention is hijacked by worry and comparison. In reconditioning, attention must be trained to rest deliberately, on the chest rising with breath, on the warmth of gratitude, on the image of a future already felt in the present. This is why imagery is not about fantasizing distant perfection, but about embodying believable micro-scenes. Paying a bill calmly, entering a conversation with dignity, choosing not to rush when others hurry. These simple visions, rehearsed with emotional coherence, train the nervous system to recognize abundance as normal. The obstacle hidden within reconditioning is dopamine's subtle trick. Dopamine is not pleasure itself, but the chemical of anticipation. When the nervous system becomes addicted to quick hits, likes, notifications, impulsive purchases, it confuses beginnings with completions. Excitement flares at the start, but commitment wanes before the finish. This creates a cycle of scattered efforts, none strong enough to reshape identity. The antidote is deliberate delay of reward, to feel joy not at the idea of starting, but at the evidence of finishing, to allow the body to associate satisfaction with consistency rather than novelty. Over weeks, this practice untangles the grip of instant gratification, making space for deeper stability. Reconditioning is less about dramatic transformation and more about subtle consistency. A daily ritual of 20 minutes may not appear miraculous, yet over time it alters the very baseline of being. A session may begin with breath coherence, move into evoking a memory of genuine care, continue with embodying a single scene of desired future, and close with committing to 2 irreversible actions for the day. The power lies not in grandeur, but in repetition. Each day the body learns again that safety and growth can coexist, that the future can be rehearsed without fear, that gratitude can precede evidence. Still, obstacles will intrude. Unexpected conflicts, fatigue, or doubt will interrupt the flow. The secret is not to demand perfection, but to design contingencies. A short ritual of 3 minutes, stretching the neck, breathing deeply, naming 3 things appreciated in the present, can restore coherence when disruption strikes. In this way, abundance is not postponed until circumstances are perfect. It is maintained through the art of returning, again and again, to presence. This is what transforms reconditioning from theory into practice. It is essential to clarify myths often linked to manifestation. The universe does not deliver rewards because thoughts were polished to shine. Rather, when the inner state shifts, perception itself changes. What once seemed invisible or unattainable becomes noticeable, approachable, actionable. Choices align differently, opportunities are sustained rather than avoided, and relationships grow in resonance with the new state. The law is less about attraction and more about alignment. The world responds to the rhythm you embody, not to the slogans you repeat. To hold this perspective, imagine a stormy sea. The waves are wild, unpredictable, and beyond your control. The compass in your hand, though it trembles, still points north. Your practice of reconditioning is that compass. Each breath, each pause, each micro-scene rehearsed teaches you not to calm the sea, but to read your own orientation more clearly. Over time, the trembling lessens and direction hold steady. This steadiness is what allows abundance to root not in fleeting circumstances, but in enduring presence. In diagnosing scarcity, the focus was on unveiling the hidden mechanisms of fear and self-sabotage. In reconditioning, the task is to offer the nervous system a new normal: silence instead of noise, coherence instead of chaos, delayed satisfaction instead of quick spikes, and micro-scenes of dignity instead of fantasies of escape. These practices do not promise immediate transformation, but they guarantee a shift in the baseline from which life is lived. And when the baseline changes, everything that grows from it, thoughts, choices, relationships, opportunities, changes as well. Reconditioning is therefore not a technique to be mastered and abandoned. It is a rhythm to be lived, a language to be spoken daily until it becomes native. Breath by breath, silence by silence, image by image, the body learns what the mind has long desired. That abundance is not something to chase, but something to inhabit. And once it is inhabited, the evidence of it begins to emerge naturally, without the desperate grasp of scarcity. This is the foundation upon which the next steps of transformation will rest, the quiet yet powerful soil from which the harvest of manifestation will grow. Beneath many techniques of manifestation lies an unspoken wound, the belief that value must always be proven through struggle. People may adopt rituals, repeat affirmations, or follow structured practices, but internally, they still carry the script that worth is earned only through suffering. This hidden contract ensures that every attempt at growth is followed by guilt, for joy feels undeserved unless pain has preceded it. In this tension, abundance becomes fragile, constantly sabotaged by the need to validate oneself through hardship. Recognition of this secret agreement is the first step toward reconciliation. Until the body and mind acknowledge it, self-sabotage will silently undercut even the most sincere efforts. At the heart of reconciliation lies the image one carries of oneself. When the internal mirror is cracked, no external accomplishment can repair it. An individual may reach milestones, but the reflection returns distorted. Success is dismissed, love is doubted, and peace is delayed. Healing does not require erasing the past. It requires retelling it with compassion. Instead of rehearsing the narrative of failure, one begins to ask gentler questions. Who told me I had to hurt before I could receive? What law have I been obeying that demanded pain as payment? These questions loosen the chains of unconscious loyalty to suffering and create space for a new identity to emerge, one that allows dignity and joy without precondition. Anxiety in this framework is not the enemy, but misplaced energy. It is the body prepared for movement without a clear container for action. Left undefined, it spirals into worry, overthinking, and paralysis. Given direction, it becomes intensity, focus, and drive. The shift occurs when one chooses a simple sequence whenever the wave of urgency rises. First, name the state. My body is calling for control. Second, provide nourishment rather than suppression. A glass of water, a pause for breath, a stretch of the shoulders. Third, channel that awakened energy into a single action that leaves a trace, sending a message, organizing a document, completing a small commitment. The act of naming, nurturing, and moving teaches the body that anxiety can be translated into intention rather than chaos. Stories of transformation illustrate the depth of this reconciliation. Consider someone who spent years swinging between bursts of productivity and long retreats into avoidance. The true turning point was not a new method or external breakthrough, but the refusal to demand humiliation as the price of achievement. By writing private agreements, I will not insult myself when tired, I will not trade paths out of panic, and by sustaining a 20-minute ritual each day, the individual reshaped identity. Within months, the fear of disapproval diminished, once avoided opportunities were pursued, and financial stability followed. The change was not born of chance. It was the fruit of consistent emotional coherence, of treating the self as ally instead of adversary. It is tempting to layer new affirmations over an unstable emotional ground, yet phrases like, I prosper, mean little if the body is flooded with caffeine, deprived of rest, or overwhelmed by digital noise. Regulation precedes affirmation. Only when the nervous system is calmed can words settle into soil capable of holding them. Otherwise, declarations remain fragile masks, easily shattered by stress. This is why reconciliation is not merely cognitive, but physical. Sleep, nourishment, and gentle rhythm become spiritual practices, preparing the body to believe what the mind dares to affirm. Paradoxically, allowing small pleasures during the journey strengthens the foundation of transformation. When abundance is associated only with the final victory, the path feels barren, reinforcing the old belief that joy is forbidden until the end. By introducing moments of rest, beauty, or play into the process, one teaches the body that growth does not demand punishment. This is not indulgence but calibration, a steady message that safety exists here and now, even while expansion continues. The metaphor of a garden captures this truth with clarity. One does not scold the soil for being bare in winter, nor demand fruit before its season. Instead, there is watering, pruning, waiting, and watering again. Anxiety wants to harvest in March what was planted in August, impatient for proof that effort is not wasted. But reconciliation means learning to delight in the care itself, to find purpose in tending rather than only in reaping. In this posture, the passage of time no longer threatens. It becomes an ally, nourishing growth invisibly beneath the surface until the harvest arrives. When reconciliation deepens, subtle shifts reveal themselves. Harsh inner dialogue softens, restlessness becomes focus, and guilt loses its grip. The individual begins to act not out of desperation to prove worth, but out of alignment with a calmer self-image. Decisions are no longer reactive but deliberate, shaped by dignity rather than by fear. This shift does not erase difficulty, but it changes its meaning. Challenges become fields of training rather than punishments. Each obstacle, instead of confirming inadequacy, confirms capacity. The reconciliation of self-image and the transformation of anxiety are not ends in themselves. They are bridges. They connect the raw energy of survival to the refined intention of creation. Through this bridge, abundance can finally cross from concept into lived experience. What once was a cycle of sabotage becomes a cycle of renewal. And in that renewal, the body, mind, and spirit learn to rest in a new law. That worthiness is not earned by suffering, but revealed by coherence, compassion, and steady practice. Every vision of abundance must eventually descend into the soil of daily life. Without rhythm, structure, and measurable alignment, intention remains suspended as desire rather than maturing into evidence. The question is not whether you long for transformation, but how you choose to embody it across the ordinary days that shape identity. A plan of 30 days may seem modest, yet it becomes the scaffolding through which coherence is stabilized, anxiety is calmed, and abundance begins to root itself in both inner state and outer results. A practical path begins with designing a daily architecture that honors both discipline and gentleness. Mornings hold a sacred capacity to set the emotional tone of the day. A ritual of 12 to 18 minutes is sufficient. 4 minutes of breathing in coherence to align heart and brain, 6 to 8 minutes rehearsing a believable scene of desired future already lived, and 2 to 6 minutes of writing down 2 small actions that will leave undeniable traces before nightfall. These micro-commitments matter less for their scale than for their irreversibility. They train the body and mind to experience completion, not just anticipation. Midday requires a checkpoint. Scarcity thrives in unconscious drift. Coherence thrives in deliberate return. A 3 to 5 minute pause is enough to recalibrate. A single question: am I inhabiting my body or living in my head? Followed by 6 steady breaths. This brief interruption resets the compass when distractions have hijacked the course. Nighttime then becomes the chamber of integration. 5 to 12 minutes spent naming 3 concrete evidences of progress anchor the nervous system in trust. Gratitude here is not general, but specific, for effort shown, for resilience in conflict, for clarity gained. By ending the day in acknowledgement rather than criticism, the body learns to anticipate tomorrow with readiness instead of dread. Beyond rituals, metrics must be established to prevent drift into vagueness. Internal metrics measure what cannot be seen but can be felt: the speed of return after stress, the number of consecutive days sustaining at least 20 minutes of practice, the quality of rest, and the proportion of self-talk free from insult. External metrics reflect tangible evidence: the number of actions that left traces, the stabilization of essential finances through negotiated debts or cancelled leaks, and the amount of time reserved for restoration, walking in nature, stretching, or nourishing meals. These measurements transform spirituality into practice, making abundance not an abstract hope, but a trackable journey. Financial alignment is often the hidden fault line where dreams collapse. To embody abundance without managing resources is to build upon sand. The practice begins with listing every fixed and variable expense, then marking in green what nourishes the state of coherence, and in red what drains it. Green includes healthy food, supportive silence, restorative sleep. Red includes impulsive spending and subscriptions that mask emptiness. The task is not ruthless austerity, but selective pruning. Reduce only the red, negotiate one debt at a time, and redirect energy into essentials that stabilize presence. Money then ceases to be an adversary and becomes a mirror. It reflects the clarity of decisions consistently made. Language itself must be reconditioned. The inner dialogue of "I must" is replaced with "I choose," shifting control back to the self. "I cannot fail" transforms into "I will learn as I act." "No one supports me" evolves into "I will ask clearly for support from this person today." These subtle changes redirect energy from self-punishment to self-alignment. Over weeks, words reshape perception, and perception reshapes experience. Communication ceases to sabotage and begins to sustain. Yet the most silent saboteur of coherence is isolation. In scarcity, the tendency is to retreat until worthy enough to rejoin others. But healing requires connection, not withdrawal. Define 2 trusted individuals for weekly check-ins of 10 to 15 minutes with simple structure: what was done, where resistance appeared, what the next step will be. These conversations are not to impress, but to stabilize. By speaking progress aloud, the nervous system anchors reality beyond private doubt. The 30-day journey unfolds in weekly layers. In the first week, establish the ritual, cut one financial leak, and engage in the first conversation of accountability. In the second, sustain the ritual, negotiate one expense, and complete one delayed proposal or action. In the third, maintain consistency, introduce a midday silence ritual, and engage in the second accountability dialogue. In the fourth, review all metrics, celebrate 3 evidences of transformation, and prepare the ground for continuation beyond the 30 days. This structure is both practical and symbolic. It communicates to the body that life can be restructured in increments without collapse. Misconceptions must be dissolved along the way. The idea that "when I have, then I will be" inverts the natural order. Being precedes having. By embodying coherence today, you perceive abundance where scarcity once blinded you and create opportunities where none seem to exist. Likewise, the myth that one functions best under pressure reveals itself as temporary fuel with long-term cost. Pressure delivers results in bursts, but corrodes identity with time. True abundance requires longevity, an emotional stamina that pressure cannot sustain. The metaphor of flight illustrates this well. A plane spends nearly 80% of its time adjusting its route, correcting deviations invisible to passengers. These adjustments are not failures, they are the essence of navigation. The same is true of manifestation. To adjust daily rituals, to refine language, to recenter after distraction is not evidence of weakness, but of maturity. Abundance is not the absence of deviation, but the acceptance of continuous correction. At the conclusion of 30 days, the evidence speaks quietly, yet undeniably. The body returns to balance more quickly after stress. Small actions leave visible trails. Finances stabilize by degrees, and inner dialogue softens. Scarcity no longer dictates the emotional climate, coherence does. Abundance is no longer a distant hope, but a present rhythm. The journey is not complete, for abundance is not a final destination. It is a relationship sustained with daily presence, clear intention, and practical alignment. This path of 30 days proves not what you can dream, but what you can inhabit. Step by step, breath by breath, word by word, until the inner state becomes the outer reality. The journey through scarcity, self-sabotage, and fragmented intention has shown us something essential. Abundance is never only about external resources. It is about coherence between desire, feeling, and daily action. To live in abundance means to train the body to remain calm while evidence is still unseen, to embody dignity before success has fully materialized, and to choose clarity over the illusion of certainty. This practice does not erase challenge, but teaches how to walk through it without losing presence. You have explored how scarcity disguises itself as control, procrastination, or spiritual performance. You have learned how silence, breathing, and imagery can recalibrate the nervous system into coherence. You have witnessed that reconciliation is less about perfection and more about compassion, ending the cycle of guilt that once demanded pain as proof of worth. Finally, you have been given a structure of 30 days, a rhythm that grounds vision into measurable transformation. The truth is that abundance grows in the interval between intention and evidence. Faith, in its most lucid form, is not blind optimism, but emotional stamina, the ability to hold the inner state steady until reality aligns. The power to manifest is not found in waiting passively for miracles, but in rehearsing the self you wish to inhabit until your nervous system accepts it as normal. In this way, faith is no longer wishful thinking, but embodied practice, lived day after day with gentleness and discipline. Carry with you 3 commitments. Never punish yourself for being human, never abandon yourself when results delay, and never break the ritual of returning daily to coherence. Abundance is not distant. It is seeded in every breath, in every act of choosing presence over fear. When you remain faithful to this rhythm, the future no longer feels like a threat. It becomes an unfolding reflection of the state you have already chosen to live. Now take a moment to ask yourself, what would your life look like if you stopped waiting for certainty and started embodying the state of abundance today? This question is not meant to be answered with words alone. It is an invitation to live differently. If this message resonated with you, if it stirred something within that longs for coherence and clarity, then let this be the beginning of your practice. Subscribe to this channel so you can continue walking this path with guidance and depth. Every new video is created to anchor you in the daily reality of transformation, not in fantasies, but in practices that shift your state. Stay connected, keep growing, and allow yourself to be reminded that you are not alone in this journey. And before you go, continue watching the next video that is already waiting for you on the screen. Your path forward begins there.